Netflix live-action remake of the classic Avatar: Last Airbender, my favorite show, the animated one of course, came out over a year ago now, and wow, time moves fast. They've just announced that they wrapped filming for season 2. This means it will most likely be released around early 2026 to mid 2026 probably. And also with season 3 closely thereafter, since they shot season 2 and 3 simultaneously, mostly because of the aging of the child stars of course. The reviews for season 1 were mixed, and I myself didn't enjoy the show as much as I would have hoped. However, there is quality here buried behind baffling writing shows if you just look towards the visuals, which are much better than I ever thought could be accomplished with live action, as well as the casting I feel like is very good. But it's all just hiding behind some bad writing. And if they just can keep the good and get rid of the bad, change around some things, there is a lot of potential here. That is why today we will discuss how they should craft season 2's story, narrative, and characters to make the new season a truly great show deserving to carry the name Avatar. Before all that though, consider hitting the like button and subscribing, aiming for 1,000 people to subscribe at the end of the year, and your help will be much appreciated. Comment also if you'd like to see a video on season 3, I'd love to do one. And yeah, let's get right into it. The absolute first thing we need to do is set up some goals for the season. What do we need to change from season 1, add, take away? What do we want to keep? Do we need to focus on new things or double down on certain elements? The single first thing I want to bring up is Aang and Katara's training. With Toph obviously playing a role in the storyline, the training aspect of the group dynamic will need to be emphasized to a much greater extent. In season 1 we only get one very vague scene with Aang helping Katara waterbend in like the first episode at the at the South Pole, sorry. But their progression in the season is totally left out, with Pakku's role at the North Pole also being severely reduced. Like, the whole Katara being her own master and not needing Pakku's help is just totally stupid, so let's just leave that. Worst of all, we don't even see Aang bend water a single time if you like discount the Avatar state things, which I do not count, which is just baffling. I feel like that's the first thing on the list. The whole season is called Water. Like, the whole thing is Aang learning the 4 elements. How can you not have a single training scene of him learning water? It's just so baffling. Therefore, one goal of season 2 should absolutely be to show his evolution as a bender way more clearly, along with Katara of course. I'm fine with a little power jump for Aang in between season, especially when season 1 lacked any power progression at all. They kinda have to, or Aang will be way too weak at the start of season 2. I know some people say that it's kind of cheap for him to just jump and him being like a good waterbender straight away, but without it, we kind of have to take up so much time focusing on waterbending that should have been in season 1, fair enough, but we can't just put it in season 2 now because we have Toph's earthbending. We have to learn earthbending as well. So the more training scenes with water we have, the more we take away from the earthbending. So we definitely need some more just relaxing opening, the gang hanging out and training, just like how they open in the river on the Cave of Two Lovers, or just an entire episode of Bitter Work. We need more of that sprinkled throughout the season to show that continuity, show Aang progressing and then him using elements in fights. Like with against the Sula in the drill, showing his earthbender progression, showing his waterbending skills. We need to see those power levels so we know how powerful Aang is, so we can clearly see his progression over the season and then later in season 3, because yeah, we got nothing in season 1. A second goal should definitely concern the team's group dynamic, and this kind of ties into the first one since you can kind of do the same thing with the training scenes being a part of the group dynamic, but we barely saw our trio interact in the first season at all. They split them up too many times and they don't even feel like friends at times. It feels like they're just 3 strangers, not even like a brother and sister with Katara and Sokka. And we need to add scenes with the trio to establish their relationships more. On Appa, on just these scenes that were so emphasized in the original animated show are totally gone in season 1. So we need to focus on that in season 2. And this will become even more important when the 3 becomes 4 and Toph becomes into the fold. This could go hand in hand with goal 1, as I said before, since those like family time can coincide with training seats. Just watching the gang get stronger could be a part of the team's building, you can call it. With goal number 3, we want to address our new additions to the regular cast, Azula and Toph. Even though Azula was technically in season 1, she was never active in the plot, and honestly, why did they even include her? Kind of took away all the impact from her introduction now. So, weird writing choice again, but she'll be introduced as a threat to the gang. She'll be introduced to our heroes, we can say. And presenting Azula as an antagonistic force will not be easy. Her power, control, and demeanor cannot be easily replicated, especially in live action. I feel like the actress right now is doing a solid job, or her best, but she hasn't gotten the best material yet, so I wonder how she's bounced off the rest of the cast. Because nailing her will be absolutely vital to the story. Because otherwise it won't feel urgent and dangerous, because she is really that, unstoppable force in season 2. Toph is also a very precise character, and her role in season 2 is even greater as a mentor and friend in the group. Getting her right might be do or die for Netflix. I don't think the fanbase will tolerate a bad Toph, honestly, because she is loved. Like I said with goal 1 also, her training scenes with Aang will be crucial to really elevate this season. And then we have our last goal number 4, and it revolves around expanding the world and the magic system. Seeing more of what the Earth Kingdom can offer. Seeing Ba Sing Se, of course, but more small towns, the desert, and average people in their day, showing this intricate and beautiful world. The original creators spent so much time and effort to create this world, and I want them to show that the Earth Queen is not just Omashu and Ba Sing Se. There's way more things than that. It's so much complicated political and cultural things in this region. I know it can be a little difficult with this shorter season, the 8-episode season, since you can't really do one-off episodes in each place. So moving around within an episode, it becomes more crucial. With that, it is more harder to write a narrative around, since you want one episode to be contained in relatively one place for budgetary cost and narratively reason as well. So I understand that it's tough, but it has to be done to make this world feel expansive. This can apply to the bending as well, and it needs to be advanced, more complex moves and new sub-bending styles. We'll see it with more complex earth bending, the seismic sense with the metal bending. So Toph just brings a few there. More lightning bending from Azula as well, with more usages. Redirecting lightning also comes into this to this season. So we see a lot more in those areas, and I'd love for them to really show what this magic system has to offer. But yeah, those are the 4 goals for the season, and with those we can set up a proper plan for the entire season that hopefully fixes the mistakes of season 1. To craft a truly great season 2 remake, which maybe not lives up to the original, but comes close, we first have to learn what did the original do good and what maybe could be improved on in certain areas. And one of the harder challenges with adapting Avatar into this format, besides the animation to live action transition of course, is condensing it down from 20 episodes to only 8. I know they're longer episodes, absolutely, but it still requires altering the flow of the story and what beats it hits to function as a proper narrative. Otherwise, it'll feel like the pacing is off and we spend too much time in certain areas. Therefore, we'll go through each episode and see what elements we want to keep and which ones are unnecessary or maybe even bad, it's not perfect, and therefore should be left out. We start of course with the opening episode, the Avatar State, and it deals with the question of couldn't just Aang go and kill Osai with the Avatar State right now question that arose after his performance at the North Pole. If this even is necessary in the new show is questionable, in my opinion. Its purpose is to fill out the world. Honorable goal for sure, and kinda is for our goal number 4. However, it not maybe the best use of screen time. However, we have to be very, very concise and think about what we add. Another reason for the A+ exclusion is showing the Avatar State sparingly. Presenting Aang enter the Avatar state again and so soon after season 1's finale might work for a 20 episode season where it can have some space to breathe, but for an 8 episode slate, that space no longer really exists. Spoiler alert, we are keeping a few more later in the season, of course, so showcasing Avatar state in the first episode kind of normalizes the power too much when it should be exceedingly impactful the few times it happens. The B plot, on the other hand, is vitally important to the story overall, being directly related to goal number 3. Azula's introduction, or I guess reintroduction, of course, since she was doing something I don't know in season 1. Anyway, it sets Zuko and Iroh's journey throughout the season off, and I especially love the haircutting scene right at the end, and the episode which should be copied frame by frame in the Netflix show. The second episode, The Cave of Two Lovers, already was covered by season 1 in the second Omashu episode, I believe, but we can still take a few elements from it to enhance the story here in season 2. Namely continuing the romance plot, since most romance storylines in the original are in filler episodes, quote unquote, like in The Fortune Teller. And it's important to keep the continuity so them getting together in the end doesn't feel sudden or rushed. We can also take the training scene in the episode opens on of Katara and Aang training in the river. It would be a good choice to be the first scene in the new season 2, helping us with goal number 1 and 2. It could also open on the opening scene of the last episode, I forgot to mention that, of Paco giving them the items, like we touched on before. But outside of that, since the hippies were already covered, we move on to the B plot where Zuko and Iroh have trouble in their time on the run. I feel it's important to show them struggling before they split up, and the girl also being an interesting parallel to Zuko himself. I'd love to see them expand her characters, along with her mother, to assist with goal number 4, expanding the world. None of these scenes can carry an episode by themselves. This is not an A-plot storyline, but these could be sprinkled in to really enhance the story. So let's move on to episode 3, titled Return to Omashu. The most important element of this episode for the overall narrative is Azula recruiting Mai and Ty Lee to her death squad, working on goal number 3 of course. Beyond that, everything here might seem important on the surface, but truthfully, it's filler. The whole setup for the team even going into Omashu is extracting Bumi to teach Aang earthbending, which is promptly refuses anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Them accidentally kidnapping a child is also completely undone by the episode at the end. Furthermore, in the Netflix show, we already know that Omashu has fallen into the hands of the Fire Nations, since it's clearly shown in the epilogue of season 1. Maybe they wish to reuse sets and assets by going back to Omashu. That would potentially make financial sense. On a story level, however, meeting Bumi another time doesn't feel necessary. Certainly when considering he wasn't really a fan favorite in his first attempt, so why wasting screen time on Omashu when you could do other things? It would really take away from other interesting places that could expand the world and help goal number 4 manifest. If we just go back to Omashu, it feels like a waste, and that episode is not really that good either, so I really wish they don't go back to Omashu here, even though the characters themselves maybe don't know that Omashu has fallen at this point. Maybe we can keep the opening scene of them outside the city and just seeing it be occupied. That could be enough, and them not going in. I feel like that would be if they really want to use Omashu again, but just keep it out, please. The Swamp is episode 4, and despite not being extremely plot relevant, I feel like it's vital to the world building. The Swamp is a core part of Aang, Katara, and Sokka's journey, and we get to know a lot about them in this episode, which directly attacks goal number 2. Therefore, we'd like to keep most of the episode showing the Swamp Benders expands the magic system as well, and gives a preview to what will come in terms of power and skill, which will be expanded in this season that connects to goal number 4. We do also get 2 Zuko and Iroh scenes showing them on the road living a hard life that devolves into theft and thievery on Zuko's part. It's short, sweet, and important for the evolution of these characters and their later breakup, so I feel like it's key to keep these scenes in. And you can basically copy them, frame by frame, because they are really good. Episode 5, the Avatar Day, is the definition of a filler episode and thus should be cut for time in the remake. However, the apparent hard-on Avatar Studios and especially Netflix recently have seen to have for Kyoshi makes me kind of think that they will squeeze it in somewhere. And if they do like the Kyoshi backstory and stuff like that, that's fine. Nonetheless, we will not add anything from it for the purpose of this video, since I believe it should be cut and not included in the show. The B plot, however, with Iroh and Zuko should of course be continued from the previous few episodes to keep that continuity and to show their later breakup to be more realistic. The one theme we could maybe have in mind when constructing the live action version that is present in this episode is that not every town or person like Aang or the Avatar in general, expanding goal number 4. It's good to depict the ethical and moral differences throughout the Earth Kingdom, so to not make the world totally good versus evil, although maybe include it a little more discreetly than burning a giant Aang statue. That could be the case, but I'd love to see some elements of this included to really show that the Earth Kingdom is a very diverse place. The Blind Bandit might be the most important episode thus far, since it introduces Toph to the regular cast, a vital member of the family, and goal number 3. It's the 6th episode of the season and it's a classic for sure. It's here where season 2 really kicks into high gear and never looks back. So because of its importance and quality, we will keep basically the whole episode in the remake. Aang looking and trying to find a teacher, the wrestle-inspired arena, Toph's seismic sense, raw power, and of course headstrong personality. If anything, there will be several amazing fight scenes from this episode alone, and probably this episode can carry an entire 45-minute long episode by itself because it's just that good. We just expand a few things of Toph family and such, and maybe add some few scenes from other episodes, and this episode could really, this is an A plot worth of an episode. The next episode, number 7, Zuko Alone, will similarly be practically untouched in the remake. It's for many, me included, the single best episode of Avatar that they ever created. For it to work, however, in the new, longer and condensed format, it will have to adapt a little bit, but there's no doubt in my mind this episode should be in the new season in its entirety. We could either expand it to fit the whole entire slot by itself, or integrate it with other story elements from fitting episodes to puff out the runtime. But we'll get into that when we structure the season. Episode 8, The Chase, reintroduces Azula to the fold, which is important since he's the main antagonistic force, of course, like I said before, this season. I also love the inner turmoil within the group, leading to Toph quitting so early, which works on goal number 2, making the group dynamic more complex and more realistic. Her conversation with Iroh later on is wonderful as well. These elements should of course be included. However, it is a strange episode structure and plot-wise in how it weaves in others from previous episodes, with them all meeting in a minimum boss battle against Azula at the end. This could honestly prove a little difficult when sequencing to really fit the timeline right, when to fit the Zuko Alone and him coming in at the end, but yeah, we'll expand on it later. The training scenes from Bitter Work episode 9 is crucial for the first goal of the new season. Nevertheless, this will have to be shown more across the season than solely one episode. Overloading every training scene in one episode will be too much, especially when it's 40-50 minutes. That's just way too much to be an A plot. The show needs to be a more clear progression of power and abilities in such a magic system focused world and conflict. Speaking to goal number 4, when it comes to Sokka's B plot, we can basically ignore that since it doesn't really add much. That last story, it's just mostly there to fill time, and it's so small, so inconvenient. We can have that him being hungry is a thing somewhere, somehow, but adding this exact plot is just pretty irrelevant. The library, on the other hand, is a central part of the season's overall story arc. The library in itself, Wan Shi Tong, the Oasis librarian, and of course Appa getting kidnapped when the library sinks into the sand are all central parts of the world-building narrative and group dynamic, goals 2 and 4. I know it's kind of weird now when I think about it that Wan Shi Tong was shown in this Spirit episode in season 1, and I don't know how really the impact will be there now. Like maybe his appearance here would be kind of weird, or maybe they just don't have his appearance at all. That I feel that would be a mistake, but the mistake was originally in season 1, and I feel like you shouldn't be too hindered by that. Just do the whole library itself and just ignore what happened in season 1 at this point. This works quite well, of course, with the following episode, The Desert, which can easily combine with the library to create a longer, more fitting narrative to the live-action show. Personally, The Desert is an incredible episode, top 5 episodes hands down for me. So I'd rather finish an episode with a dramatic high of the series thus far with Aang going into the Avatar state against the Sandbenders than leave it in the middle of an episode. Zuko and Iroh escape in trouble with the help of the White Lotus, also a great part of the episode, and continues their journey, helping with goal number 4, so that should also be kept in. Now we move on to part 1 and 2 of Journeys to Ba Sing Se, episodes 12 and 13. The first episode of the duo shows our gang travel the Serpent's Pass to help a pregnant couple. Their journey here, along with Zuko and Iroh's similar journey to Ba Sing Se, should be included in the live-action remake. The continuity in world just wouldn't make sense otherwise, if they don't just make something up, of course, which I do not have the confidence in them to do. Suki also rejoins the cast for a while here, along with Jet and the Freedom Fighters, which I do love. Definitely a welcome addition that will stay in our version. Unfortunately, I'm a little conflicted on the whole drill concept they went for in part 2. On one hand, it gives the second parter a good final boss, so to speak, and involves our antagonists Azula in the story, which she's been absent for a few episodes now, so I feel like it's important to have her be engaged in the story. On the other hand, I feel like it's a bit too advanced for the world, even in an industrializing time. It's practically just one giant action set piece, and I'm sure the producer will include it, but utmost importance here is to make it believable. Make it a little more human operated or smaller scale or something. I don't know, I'm not a writer, but I just feel like it's a little too advanced for the current world we have, where just balloons is pretty new. So I feel like this just entire drill thing that's massive, it's just a little too much, that's moving pretty quickly as well. I feel like it should be a little bit more manpower heavy. And I am planning to make a full deep dive into this episode and why I kind of struggle with it, especially with the drill concept, and why it does some things very good. So stay tuned for that. The Ba Sing Se era officially starts here with the City of Walls and Secrets, episode 14. We get to see the city, its geography and politics. This is of course central and will be kept. The gang do stay in Ba Sing Se for quite a while. This is an aspect that needs to be emphasized in the new season. For Aang to make this incredible journey in strength across the 3 seasons and when it comes to his personality as well, becoming a leader and becoming mature, the timeline needs to be quite expansive as to not make him feel like a Mary Sue, which more than one character got called during the season 1 of the Netflix adaptation. I'm looking at you, Katara, I'm looking at you, Aang, like both of you need to step up. The mystery aspect of this episode is something that I quite like as well, and the building up that something just isn't right in this city is crucial for this Ba Sing Se arc and the later fall of the city. We have an all-out filler episode next with Tales of Ba Sing Se. This episode is a classic for sure, and the Iroh part of it is genuinely a masterpiece. Maybe the best Avatar content ever. Maybe not the best episode, since Zuko alone I feel like it's the best episode, like I said before, but the best small part of an episode is this. Unfortunately, like I said, it is only a small part of an entire episode, which doesn't really fit too great with anything else since it's supposed to be a standalone episode. This leaves us with a few options. Either cut it entirely, which would not be a great choice to say the least, with its classic status, and I feel like the fans would not take that great. They would get slaughtered online for that decision for sure. We can try to stretch it out and make an entire episode of it, but there is very little room for it, and maybe that's too steep of a screen time tax for the shortened season. Or third, we can attempt to combine it with other episodes in a more limited role. It's a tough case, and so always we'll discuss it later on. Appa's Lost Days is also one of those difficult episodes to implement in a season with longer but fewer episodes. The episode follows Appa's journey after being kidnapped to the present day, and both reminisces on the past and foreshadows the future. The two moments that are quite important are Sula May and Ty Lee defeating the warriors of Kyoshi, as well as Appa meeting Guru Patik at the Eastern Air Temple. The plot can't carry itself, of course, and needs to be weaved into other bigger narratives. How important it really is can definitely be called into question. It's one of those I'd love to add, but only as a bonus, like not in the cost of anything else. In other words, it's very low on the priority list. Episode number 17, Lake Laogai, is when shit really hits the fan. The gang investigates the mysterious circumstances within the walls of Ba Sing Se, while Zuko and Iroh attempt to come to terms with their new life in the city. Story-wise, this episode is extremely relevant and will be kept. The Jet inclusion and later death, ?
Did Jet just die? You know, it was really unclear.
And the Zuko and Iroh moment towards the end is a clear highlight in the entire season. Lake Laogai will 100% be the main plot of an episode in the Netflix Season 2 remake, so I will do the same with the prediction. 18 and 19, The Earth King, and the following episode, The Guru, are both setup episodes for the eventual finale. They are slower and less action-packed, except for a cold open type action scene at the palace. Even though both episodes tackle more important elements, both narrative-wise and especially philosophically, it will be difficult to include it all in a live-action remake. Keeping the Earth King in his storyline, Aang training with the Guru, Sokka meeting his father, Katara keeping Ba Sing Se afloat politically, Toph and the bounty hunters, and finally Azula's plot to overthrow the Earth King might be too tall of a task. Sacrifices will have to be made for sake of time, but we'll get to that. For now, let's move on to the finale of the season, Crossroads of Destiny. It is an incredible episode and by far the best finale of the 3 seasons, in my opinion. The unusual character conversations we get with Katara and Zuko in the prison, as well as Aang and Iroh, shine here along with the stunning action set piece and of course devastating ending. With the nature of being a finale, we don't have to alter too much to the story to make it fit a new medium. The real question with this episode is execution, because the blueprint is clear as day. And sticking the landing at the end of the season is probably more important than anything else to set up season 3. One more thing I need to mention before we go any further that I yet haven't really touched upon. We need to think about foreshadowing season 3. With the blessing that is hindsight, we can add elements that help set the foundation for ideas to explore further in season 3, or even remove some things if they're not necessary in the new story structure. If we roughly look over season 3, the ending seems to be a bit rushed, which is a criticism I do agree with on some level. To help with that, we could add a few lines of dialogue or just background information concerning lion turtles and the horrible plan by the Fire Nation, and just Sozin's comment in general, since we don't really get much information on that and they removed almost all information of that from season 1 and focus more on the destruction of the North Pole. So we need to add that back in a little bit to not make it the finale in season 3 feel just sprung upon. Alright, we've finally arrived to the end. We have set up goals, we have looked through all the episodes. Now it's time to put all the things we know together and sequence and plan the whole season out. Disclaimer, this will of course not be perfect, and if you think I left some things out that should have been included, or maybe I included some things that you think should have been left out, just leave your sequencing and your plan for the season down in the comments, and I'll love to respond and read those. But for me, my first episode will be The Swamp. Here we kind of move past a few of the original episodes in season 2 in the animated show to kind of streamline the season. The episode I really focus on here and take elements from are the Avatar State, the Cave of Two Lovers, the Swamp of course, and Return to Omashu. The A-plot will feature Katara and Aang training while Sokka either chills or plans. They get pulled into the swamp and wander around. They see the visions, but don't split them up for too long because I feel like that's an issue, and of course we need to work on goal number 2. They meet the swamp benders and fight against them, and then eventually manage to escape the swamp with the help of those swamp benders, and of course learn some things with the vines and the spirituality to help with goal number 4. The B plot, or maybe I should even call it the A plot since I feel like it should have more emphasis on it, is to introduce Azula on the boat, training Lightning, her meeting Zuko and Iroh again. They follow her to the ship, fighting breaks out, they manage to escape. they run to the river and cut their hair, and then they try to find some place to chill in the woman's house for a while, and then steal their stuff afterwards. Eventually, in the end of the episode, it ends on Azula standing in front of Ty Lee upside down, just like in Return of Omashu, to tease that a little bit. I decided to go in this direction, like I said before, because I wanted to streamline the first, 5 episodes of the season. I feel like those are a little bit more filler and the weaker part of the season, because, the Blind Band-Aid hint is the next episode, but whatever. I feel like you already knew that. But it really kicks into high gear after the episode, so I really wanted to take the best elements of the first 5 episodes and really streamline it into one episode. And I feel like the swamp is probably the most important episode of all those, with the Zuko Iroh plot just going throughout. Hopefully this will help with the pacing and really makes everything exciting, as well as showing, more of the world, more of the swamp, and showing, the struggles which Zuko and Iroh have and now that they're on the run. For episode 2, of course, it's the Blind Bandit, and yeah, it won't change that much. The episode we pull from is the Blind Bandit, of course, the swamp, and Avatar Day. And the A plot, it's basically the Blind Bandit. They go to the city or the town, try to find a teacher. Aang tries the dojo. They eventually find the Rumble, go there and watch Toph just kick ass. And I really want to see, the execution of those fight scenes is so important because she is awesome, and her introduction needs to be as awesome as it is in the animation. Maybe that's high expectation, but like similar at least level. And the only thing I might want to add to that A plot is from the Avatar Day, where maybe the town isn't as happy to see, Aang and Avatar. Maybe some people have a little bit refrain towards him, a little bit pessimism. Maybe he's not welcome everywhere. Maybe he tries a dojo and they won't accept him because of that he left them. Like, everyone shouldn't be so loving towards Aang, and I feel like that could be very greatly showed here. For the B plot, it will be Zuko and Iroh struggling on the streets. Those 2 scenes from the swamp will be amazing here, and because of Zuko's stealing and moral ambiguity he kind of falls into, they split up at the end of the episode, which should be a really powerful scene. And I feel like these 2 episodes gives enough time before the split up to really give that some weight behind it, and hopefully they can execute on it. And this one will be a little special because it will also include a short C plot where Azula assembles her death squad. Of course, we will continue from the last episode's little cliffhanger of her recruiting Ty Lee at the circus. So that will include these scenes here, but also, picking up May in Omashu is also a thing. So maybe they have a quick little action scene there to keep the episode flowing, or maybe just to pick them up. Decides on how much time they have with the other plot lines. Let's move on to the 3rd episode of the season, which was one of the, if not the most difficult ones for me to craft. And the title is Zuko Alone, which doesn't really fit anymore, so the title definitely needs to change because it's not just Zuko Alone, because the episode we pull from is Zuko Alone and The Chase. And the A plot will be the entire episode of Zuko Alone, just as it is, basically. It's perfect. Don't do too many changes to it. It's just too good for that. But it's just not long enough, and I feel like padding it out too much will be... I don't have the trust for them to... I just put it in as it is because, it's so easily to fuck up. I was kind of fiddling around with the idea of having Zuko Alone as an entire episode, to really pad it out and make that story, as beautiful as it is, but just longer. That could be the case, and I don't blame you if you choose that option, but I feel like it takes up too much, like 1/8 of the entire season, just that episode. It feels a little too steep for me, so therefore I include the chase as well, and that's why the B plot will be Azula chasing the gang on Appa through the night, with eventually Toph splitting off from the group after some disagreements. With the C plot then being Iroh and Toph stumbling upon each other and having some tea. I love that discussion. I need that conversation in the story. I feel like this also made the most sense since at the end of Zuko Alone and the chase they meet up at the end. So them, being parallel in one episode and then meeting up at the end, it makes sense. And everyone coming together at the end, putting their differences aside to go against Azula, recognizing she is the greatest threat. Is, like I said before, she is the main antagonist, like I said many times, of the season. So I feel like that's a good way to show her ability and her, how dangerous she truly is. Okay, number 4, the library. And the episodes we pull from here are Bitterwork, the library, and the desert. And this is a very straightforward episode. The A-plot will open on Aang and Toph's training, then getting into the oasis, meeting the librarian, looking for the library, finding it, going in, looking around, Sokka finding the Day of Black Sun, Wan Chi Tong walk in on them, library sinking, Appa being kidnapped, and then the librarian stays inside. The gang then have to walk through the desert and suffer all the things that comes with that. And then at the end of the episode, it ends on Aang entering the Avatar state when they stumble on some sandbenders. Such a powerful scene, and I just needed to be the ending to an episode to really hammer home how important it is for Aang's character. The one thing I want to change from the library here to really help with the pacing is that they don't go back to get this Day of Black Sun information after that library starts sinking, because it makes it feel like they don't have any urgency because they run back like they have so much time. So they should already get that information before Wan Chi Tong kind of stumbles upon them and gets angry, because otherwise, it just feels like they have a million years for them to get out. So I feel like you should rush to the exit as soon as it starts sinking. And for the B plot, it will be mirroring a bit of work with Zuko training with Iroh on lightning redirection in the beginning part of the episode. They eventually escape through the oasis from the bounty hunters with the White Lotus connection, and that White Lotus connection is beautiful, and it's time to see it again to get those hints for season 3, like we said, the foreshadowing. And the C plot, the bounty hunters following the gang of Zuko and Iroh. It's just maybe small scenes that could also be included in the B plot, but it can be its own scenes. It's just very few scenes in the bar or whatever. It doesn't have to be much. With the training scenes from Bitterwork included here, I should mention that, like I said before, it is not only here. Imagine more training scenes throughout. So I won't mention every single scene here. So that's why I don't mention that Bitterwork kind of includes in every episode here. But I would just want to say that this type of training that they do here will be very intense compared to other episodes, but we need more training scenes beyond this, not just in this episode. Number 5, and this is the journey to Ba Sing Se, which also kind of works perfectly since it's a part 1 and part 2. So the episodes we do work with is Journey to Ba Sing Se 1 and 2, and maybe a little bit of Appa Lost Days. I haven't really decided on that one. The A plot will opening the hangar. The gang can't take boats, so they help this pregnant couple over the Serpent's Pass. Suki joins, they walk the pass, some Suki and Sokka scenes, Aang and Katara and Toph working in the background on some training while they walking. They make it out eventually and she gives birth. They watch the beauty of the walls, but then see the drill, and then it's just a big action piece with them stopping the drill. So instead of just this being a 2-parter, it's just the same episode with the drill being a finale to the episode. The B plot will be Zuko and Iroh taking the boats, where they meet Jed and they see Iroh fire Ben's tea at the customs as well. So I love that inclusion. And the C plot here could be short Appa's flashbacks maybe. I'm not sure how that will include, and I feel like it could be very valuable to see him, a little bit in each episode until he's found, to show a little flashbacks, but it could also be removed. Make your own decision on that one. Next up we have episode 6, and we'll call this City of Walls and Secrets, and it will be based mostly off City of Walls and Secrets episode, of course, with Tales of Ba Sing Se and Appa's Lost Days being sprinkled in. For the A-plot, Team Avatar explore Ba Sing Se, because this is the start of the Ba Sing Se era, and they find it rather suspicious. Julian meets them and they lead them to their house, they get flowers and start looking for Appa, but it all just kind of smells bad. We later in the episode show a normal day of our heroes when they kind of They're still looking for Appa, and we get those little flashbacks here and there, but we show more regular day and show that time does progress. We show some training here, and that's where Tales of Ba Sing Se comes in. We see maybe Toph and Katara go on a spa trip or something, more laid back, to give it some space here in the latter half of the season. And it all is normal until Jet crashes the party. And for the B-plot then, we get some Appa flashbacks. Probably we get some more Tales of Ba Sing Se action of maybe Zuko going on a date. We see Zuko and Iroh opening the tea shop. We see all that kind of stuff, them establishing themselves in Ba Sing Se. So this is just an episode to really show Ba Sing Se for what it is, and give time and show time progress, to really give Katara, Toph, and Aang some time to practice, some time to train, and to show some more power progression. We kinda do really need that part, because here with episode 7 we go right in with Lake Laogai. Of course the episode will be Lake Laogai, and then later the Earth Queen. The A-plot will, with the help of Jet, the gang solve the mystery and find Lake Laogai. Jet dies, quote unquote. Appa is found outside and they take care of Long Fei. Action scene of them busting into the palace and convince Earth King of everything. Originally that's an opening scene in an episode, but here we kind of take it in the tail's end of an episode. And then Sokka and Katara at the end get a letter from their father, and Aang gets one from Guru Patik. For the B-plot, Zuko breaks into Lake Laogai, Iroh follows, and they have their dramatic conversation. This is probably one of the most important conversations in the entire season, so they cannot fuck this up. Appa is eventually freed and they go home. They work in a tea shop until they get a letter as well. So it all ends on everyone getting a letter. The most important thing in this episode is to build suspense. It is the penultimate episode of the season, the one before the finale. So the time after, the action scene busting into the palace and convincing the Earth King, as well as Zuko and Iroh breaking out Appa, we really need all these characters to really settle down and build that suspense for the finale, so it can properly work and flow, so all that work is done beforehand. And finally, of course, the Crossroads of Destiny, episode 8, where we pull from the Guru and the Crossroads of Destiny. We don't have to do too much to the Crossroads of Destiny plot, since it's so complete, and we just need to include the Guru Patik stuff early in the episode, and that's what we do in the A plot, where Aang arrives to the Guru and start training immediately. We need to really front load some training seeds here, because otherwise they feel like he comes there and then he leaves immediately after, and that feels you just kind of waste. So he needs to actually accomplish some things until Aang, of course, hears Katara, hears her scream and feels like she's in danger, and he rushes back to Ba Sing Se without completing his training. While that's going on, Katara is trying to help Ba Sing Se, get through these rough times, but gets caught in a coup and gets captured by Azula and the Dai Li. And also, while this is going on, we have Sokka away to meet his father for the first time in a long time, and we don't have the time to spend too much screen time on this. Maybe just like one scene of him walking down and meeting him, or maybe like we can have them talking a little bit, but we really can't afford to spend too much time on it, so we need that quickly to return to Ba Sing Se. And with the help of Iroh, they find the catacombs and free Katara and Zuko. They all fight Azula in the old city. Azula kings Aang, Ba Sing Se falls, and Katara then resurrects Aang with the spirit water. And it's important here, that's the first time I mentioned the spirit water, but it's important that Paku do give them the spirit water, give Katara the spirit water at the beginning of the season, because otherwise it won't be any foreshadowing for it, of course. So they really need to show her, gaining possession of it at the beginning of the season. That's why I probably now, at the end of this episode, favor them opening like it opens in the animated show on the boat, with Paku giving out some gifts. For the B-plot, like I said, Katara plans with the general. All high-ranking politicians get captured along with her, and Zuko and Katara stays in the prison together. We also have Toph, maybe that's a C-plot then I guess, Toph going away to talk with her parents, but then get captured by the bounty hunters and learns to metal bend. and then goes back to Ba Sing Se, and also with Sokka meeting his dad. And then we also had the C plot with Zuko and Iroh gets invited to serve tea to the king, and it's a trap. Iroh gets away, but Zuko gets captured, and then Iroh goes to Team Avatar to help Zuko get free. And that's the entire season. And I hope that's I feel like that's a good, plan for the season. I hope it kind of flows better. And I tried my best to translate the animated series as best as I can into the live action format and into the shorter, more condensed, with longer episode season that Netflix has preferred. If you have any thoughts of things I didn't include or shouldn't have included, just comment them down below, and I'd love to read and hear about how you would structure a season of Avatar Last Airbender, this new live action season. As well, if you want me to do a season 3 prediction similar to this one. This is by far the longest episode I did, but I enjoyed it so much. And with all that said, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.